Tell me, brother, what's been the highlight of the day for you?
The highlight of the day for me has
This
been...
is the bit where you say you met the two white Muslims.
Yeah, I met the two white Muslims.
Oh,
It's almost like somebody told you to say that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Yes, I've been asked to do a bit of a talk about my journey to Islam and sort of my experiences. Am I right, Kaushal, in terms of
and also your challenges and opportunities that you have in
Yes.
being a Muslim.
Okay, the parents, my parents, I'll tell you a bit about my background. My parents are from Jamaica. I was born in the UK. And my parents were both Christian, and they brought us up to believe in that there was a God. I've got two older brothers and sisters, and you know, I grew up believing that there was a God. So we was always taught to pray. However, I didn't believe, as I got older and you got to your own decisions, I didn't really believe in religion. I believed that there was always a God, but I didn't believe there was a religion, and I sort of lived my own life not in the way my parents was sort of expecting. But things started to change. I started to question a lot of things, especially through my mid-20s to my early 30s. I started to question a lot of the things that I was seeing, a lot of the things that I was involved in. And it started actually with one of my friends was questioning. I had a good friend of mine, and he was questioning a lot of things as well. And it was funny because not long after he was questioning all these things, he embraced and became a Muslim. And when he became a Muslim, I was a bit shocked. Because I didn't expect, because the way that I was living, I couldn't see the transition and how he could maintain it. So, you know, over the years, I don't know if you know Sheffield very well. I obviously probably don't because you're not from around the way, but Sheffield's a place where there's a lot of reverts. There's a lot of people who embrace. And I, over the years, have seen people embrace that I knew from the community. I've seen how, as well, Islam has sort of changed people in terms of how there was previously and what they was doing to how they're living. For example, you know, Mustafa, brother Mustafa, I knew him, and he wouldn't mind me sharing this, as P. West, who was growing up.
By the way, he was the guy in the phone box.
Wow.
He was the guy in the phone box.
Amazing.
Oh, have you met Mustafa then?
No, my story.
Oh, okay. Well,
Amazing.
Mustafa's very interesting because the area that I grew up in was a very sort of crime-ridden area. There was a lot of drugs, there was a lot of gang-related activity, there was a lot of things happening. And Mustafa was known, as I was young, because he's a lot older than me, he was known as a sort of kind of a gangster. People used to look at him like that. So people used to look up to Mustafa. And then one day we heard that there was a rumour going around that Mustafa's gone mad. Right? And because he was my oldest brother's age, and I was saying, well, he's wearing all Pakistani clothes. And he's in a place called CJ's, which was at the time a nightclub where he was preaching. So everybody said he was gone mad. What he actually did is when Mustafa embraced. When he embraced, he sort of he became Mustafa overnight, and he's never looked back. And it's funny because my oldest brother said to me that when I embraced, he said to me, "I know Islam works because I look at Mustafa."
Wow.
Because for 30 years, and all the people that was around Mustafa are dead, or either dead, or in prison, or in sort of mental health units, but he's the only one who seems to have gone through and he's lived his life, and he's got kids now that you know, and he's a different person. It's funny because he's still the same kind of character, but he's a totally different person. And when I was younger, bringing Mustafa into it, when I was younger, we was running about. He used to always stop us and try to give us dawah. He was explaining to us about religion. And we used to run away. and not listen to him at the time. But it was funny, going back to my original story, my friend, he embraced, and I questioned it at the time because I thought, how are you going to do this? And we're not going to go out to clubs, you're not going to do any of this no more. And some people questioned it, but he carried on doing what he was doing. But without realising it, and I think this happens when you embrace, I was watching him from a distance. So I was kind of analysing him. Now and again I go to his house, I realise that he's dressing different, there's a different vibe from him. So our conversations became different. And what happened was, 7 years on, I started to I was involved in a lot in business. It was a network marketing business, and I ended up getting involved in this business. There was a lot of Muslims involved in it, and through this business I came across a brother who was a revert from Jamaica in Manchester, and I was meant to meet him a number of times, but we never got a chance to meet. And every time I was trying to contact him, I'd drive to Manchester to meet him, and he'd stand me up. He wasn't there. There's one time I did it, and I thought, well, I'm not going to contact this man again. And as I was leaving, he phoned me up, and I said, oh, I'm still here, let's meet. And we ended up meeting to talk about business, but then the conversation moved on to Islam. And he started to explain to me about Islam and his beliefs and what he believes. And I came from a Christian household, so I thought I knew about religion. But he was saying a lot of things that was answering some questions that I had all along. So he told me the story, and I think this was a turning point where I actually started listening to him. Because he was talking to me, I wasn't really listening because I was just being polite. But when he started talking about this one particular story, I started really listening. And it was a story of Adam and how Iblis, Shaitan, became the Shaitan. And he told me the story because in Christianity it was taught that the devil was an angel. And for some reason, I don't know why, it never really sat with me. It just seemed a bit strange. But when he broke down how there was jinns, there was angels have free thought, the angels don't have free thought, they can't choose what they want to do, jinns do. That made a lot of sense. But then when he explained the story of how Iblis Shaitan wouldn't bow, and how he vowed to Allah to steer everybody, Adam and his children, off the straight path, that really started to answer some questions that I've always had. And then I started to think, I thought, wait a minute, I've been chasing this guy for the past few weeks. So there must be a reason why I'm pursuing him. And he asked me at that point, he goes, why aren't you worshipping? And he said one thing to me, and I think there's this one thing that made me really think. And he goes, don't wait to be perfect before you make the first step. And why that resonated with me, because I used to always believe in God. I thought, well, I'm not going to be religious because I'm young. When you get older and you sort of chill out, then you can sort of be religious. But he made sense because he explained his own story that when he embraced, he was still not always doing good things. But he says as he started praying and getting closer to Allah, he said he pulled him away from that lifestyle that he was living. And that really made sense to me. At that point, my friend Abdul Haq, who was a Muslim, who embraced 7 years ago, his mum passed away. And he had no brothers and sisters. And it was just his mum. And as long as I've known him, his mum was his whole life, even before he embraced. So his whole life was about looking after his mum. And when she passed away, I was really worried about him. I thought, how's he going to cope? Because he's got no brothers and sisters. And I remember going to the janazah of his mum, because his mum embraced before she passed away. And I saw how everybody was hugging him. And I realised that I thought, he'll be alright because he's a Muslim, because it seems like the support, the buried his mum, everything else. And I started spending a lot of time with him. And when I met this brother in Manchester, I went to see him and Mashul were there, and they gave me all these books because I was asking about Islam. And they gave me the books on the Prophet ﷺ. I took them, but I never read them. And what happened was, I remember when the brother said to me, don't wait to be perfect before you make the first step. So what I decided to do then was embrace. I thought, okay, I'll do it. And I met some brothers and I took the Shahada. And it felt brilliant. Now, I was going to my friend Abdul Hakim, but I thought, well, his mom's just passed. I can't really burden him with much of, you know, my questions. And so I was talking to many different people. So I was talking to the brothers in Manchester, I was talking to the brothers here, I was talking to the brothers here. And as I was doing that, I started to realise that everybody didn't have the same opinion. And it was getting me confused. And some people were saying, then people were saying, don't pray here, don't be with these brothers, don't be with these brothers. And it was getting conflicting. So then I started to question whether I've done the right thing or not. And then it was funny because at that time I went to see my dad. Because my dad, I thought my dad was knowledgeable about religion because he was a Christian all his life. And I remember asking my dad and he said, look, he started talking about terrorism. But then he said to me, if you want to be a real Muslim, you need to learn Arabic. And I said, why? Because he said he believes the Quran is the word of God, but you've got to understand what the Quran is actually saying. And that was weird. And I asked my dad, I goes, Dad, if you believe God has come to you with something that's not coincidental, you'll know it, don't you? And he says, yes. So I started to kind of pursue things, but part of me was saying, look, I better take a back seat and, you know, not be in the mosque too much, learn a bit more. And then what happened was this, Abdul Haq, who was my close friend whose mum passed away, he passed away. He just passed away. He was in the gym and he just passed away. And at that point, a lot of things started to make sense to me. I saw this brother. I was with him, and all of a sudden he's no longer with us. And I'm not a person to go and look at dead bodies, but we went to see the body after they washed it, and he was smiling. And I've never seen nothing like that, so it made me sort of pursue what Islam really was. And what happened then was I started to really get around sort of Mashoud and them brothers, because I was talking to a lot of different people, and a lot of people give me all these different books that I wasn't ready for. And Mash told me one thing, one brother told me one important thing, and he says, what you're trying to do is A, B, and C, and D before you're actually establishing your prayer. He says for the first year, just focus on establishing your prayer and putting your life around your prayers and not your prayers around your life. Yeah. So the key was for me was sort of praying 5 times a day. About 18 months after that, I was fortunate enough to do Hajj. And I was on a group and I did Hajj, and that was a real eye-opener, because when I saw the different nationalities, it made me think of Malcolm X, because that was my first introduction to, believe it or not, my first introduction to Islam outside of the community that I was, people that I knew, was a group called Public Enemy. It was a rap group. And Public Enemy used to have, there was around Muslims. And they used to, and that's how I learned about Malcolm X. And when I learned the story about Malcolm X, I saw the whole film. When he went to Mecca, that's when he really understood Islam, what Islam was really about, and it made a lot of sense that, you know, it's the only, and that experience of going to Hajj where there was no class divide, there was no, everybody was on the, you know, it was a real same thing. It was a real eye opener. I never experienced anything like that. So after that point, then I started to realise I need to learn about the religion of Islam, and this is where I'm at now.
How many years have you been?
12 years now. 12 years. 12 years.
So, yeah, do you get different challenges because you're black? Do you get different challenges from Muslims and non-Muslims?
You can get that, but you can get that anywhere in life. You can, you know, the reality is that you can find good and bad in everything. I think Allah made it easy for me. I know it's been difficult for some of the brothers, but Allah made it easy for me, because the person that was partner I was with at the time, she also embraced. So I embraced and she embraced on the same night. But she was looking into his religion before. So I didn't have a problem in terms, the next thing was for us to get married, and we did. And a year later we had a son. and so it all seemed to fall into place. People have, and I do understand that exists, nationalism and sort of elements of tribalism, it exists, just like classism, sexism and all other isms exist in every other walk of life. So the masjid I go to, and I say the masjid I go to because I'll go in any mosque. Yeah, I go in any mosque, you know, Quran and Sunnah. That's you know, the umbrella. I've been treated really well, and I think a large part of that was to do with Abdul Haq, because Abdul Haq, when he was at that masjid, they had a lot of love for him, and I saw that. And when he passed away, I saw how they grieved, and it kind of gave an open door for me in that process. So my journey was pretty smooth in that sense, but I do know there is challenges for some people. I've known one brother who was Muslim for many years and he struggled to get married, and there is issues like that. But I think every test is a test for that person, isn't it? It is something when you look at, and what was interesting looking at the life of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there was a lot of people that was on, and that was black. The first migration was to Abyssinia. Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't look at race, he looked at people's hearts, and that really sort of reading the Sirah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam really opened my eyes to what Islam is really about. So, yeah.
Any questions?
Is that right?
This question maybe for Ustazah Aminah and our brothers. Now we face about issues of atheists. The group, they're Muslim, and then they are God. So what the Rifters or the Muslim in UK deal with them personally?
Atheists.
Yeah, atheists. Yeah.
They are Muslim atheists.
No.
Ex-Muslim.
Ex-Muslim.
Oh, ex-Muslim.
Ex-Muslim.
So not the general populace.
Yeah.
Because they have meetings
just
with ex-Muslim
ex-Muslims.
people in London.
Yeah. Have you had dealings with ex-Muslims?
I haven't, no. I haven't come across that at all, but I know it exists. I know it's an issue. I don't know how to. I just pray that that doesn't happen to myself in a sense. But what I would question is why, what contributes to their decision? Is it down to the actual religion, or is it down to their own experiences? Is it down to their lack of knowledge of religion as well?
Any of those three.
Yeah.
In my experience of the children I've looked after, and I was non-Muslim to begin with, many of their friends were placed in non-Muslim households, and they lost their deen very, very quickly. They were eating bacon sandwiches, night clubbing, and when I became Muslim and offered them salams anyway, even though I knew how they'd been behaving, I'd say yes, they'd lost it altogether, and that was just in light of the dunya. They just wanted all. They said it's better. They honestly did just say, who cares? When I sit to try and reason that, they were unsupported. They didn't have any knowledge of the Quran and what was in it. Like I said, they didn't know Arabic. And just total lack of guidance, which I think happens to anybody, whether they're Muslim or not. If they're not supported through their youth, then this is what happens, and so therefore that's what happened to them. And I still to this day find it very sad when I know. Having said that, there's been some wonderful young men who've come straight back onto their deen and practiced very, very well and are very good. So I make dua for them to all come back on it if they've wandered.
I think it's when somebody embraces Islam, I don't personally believe that is just people who've been born into people like us who've not been born into Muslim families. I believe that every single human being has a point where they embrace Islam, because you can be brought up in a cultural family, but you might be Muslim bi-ism, but in your ibadah and all the rest of it, you're not. You're actually You're just practicing maybe because of culture or whatever. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with people who embrace Islam, He awakens the heart. And so again, you've got the iman and you've got the ilm. If you have the iman and the ilm, aql wal qalb, those things put together, then that creates the foundation. A lot of the people who are ex-Muslims, I believe, have not ever had that foundation. So all they've seen from Islam and from Muslims is culture and negativity and the haram police and all the rest of this stuff, which is, to be fair, enough to put anybody off. I look at some of my cultural Muslim friends and they've turned to drugs, they've turned to nightclubs, they've turned to, and they love Allah, they love the fact that they love God, but they can't get their head round the restrictive cultural practices that they've been brought up and that they've been told this is Islam. But they haven't been given any other alternatives. Yeah. So when they meet people who are practicing and who do have the relevant knowledge, say, actually, do you know something, sister, or do you know something, brother? What you've been told is cultural, and that's why you're finding it difficult to function with that in your life. And then they're like, oh. But a lot of these ex-Muslims, they hate the culture so much because it's maybe given them forced marriage, maybe it's given them practices which have alienated them from the rest of British society, and they've learnt to hate that. And because that in their mind is synonymous with Islam, and then you have all the misinformation about the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about the Quran and all the rest of it, they're almost sitting on this bandwagon. And once you're on that bandwagon, it's kind of hard to get off because then you stop listening. You start being blinkered in the way and you become biased. And so then anybody who talks to you, you're just going to be on the defensive all the time because you've spent your whole life psychologically defending, and then you're like, actually, do you know something? Forget it. So it's about hearts.
And away we go. Assalamu alaikum. It's good to meet these brothers. Really good environment, good event, good to reflect. We're all part of the same deen.
Alhamdulillah.
That's the most important thing. We're all on the same journey.
Alhamdulillah.
So we really hope you enjoyed that.
For the 21 video series, everything you ever wanted to know about Islam and the Muslim culture,
but couldn't be bothered to ask,
click the link in the top right of the screen.
Also, please subscribe by clicking the red button below if you haven't already done so. We want to reach as many people as we possibly can.
Thank you once again for your support, and we'll see you in the next video.
Assalamu alaikum
wa rahmatullahi
wa barakatuh. Bismillah.